Welcome to Yates Makes. Some of the viewers of the channel requested a little bit of detail or insight into how I kind of use collage to build up, reduce, and then add back in kind of successive layers and revolutions of kind of building up, cutting back, ripping, cutting, to get a kind of, what do we call it, collage, decollage, I don't know. These techniques, I've used on and off for years, but I've gotten really into an artist called Mark Bradford, who does amazing monumental collages that have, really reignited my passions for these techniques. So here you go. Here's how I use collage. So here we go. First, I'm on a canvas board, and the kind of first steps, and I think these are really quite important, is to taking the time to build up a lot of layers. You'll see why when I get to the first stage of kind of decollage. So I'm using various glues. I've just used gesso. Here is some liquid matte medium. I'll also use a glue stick, PVA. Basically varying the glues, I find, means that some layers peel a little easier than others when you're in the decollage stage. So all you're seeing me doing in these early stages are just grabbing any old papers I can find. I'm mainly going with neutral colours or neutral tones at this stage. Bit of text involved, some pictorial stuff, some layers of paint mixed in. I'll often get a bit of scraper board or a bit of matte board like I'm doing here, and just seal some of these collage layers with some acrylic paint also. Let these dry, rip back, start to reveal some of the layers through other layers as I'm doing there. As I peel up, some of the bits that are coming off I stick straight back down, as you can see me doing there with a glue stick. I'm aiming really to get 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of paint, various different glued surfaces and papers of all types, shiny, gloss, matte, thin, thick, all sorts. I don't really know what's going to happen at this stage, so I'm trying to give myself a high probability of some interesting textures and layers as I rip in and decollage and start to build into my design. So here I am outside because I'm about to get the sander out. I'm just ripping a few kind of tails and loose pieces. I find sanding with the electric sander just kind of flattens everything out, takes some of the ridges and ripples out of the surface, just makes it easier to build successive layers once this thing starts to get quite heavy and kind of thick with layers. So here, more gel medium, as I did before. Let these layers dry, peel them up. Sometimes they're part dry, sometimes they're completely dry. You're going to get various stages of adhesion and kind of rippability, if you like. Again, back in with more acrylic. I know that I'm going to want some darker tones peeking through, so a little paint. Here I'll just freeze it because I've put a big slab of old newspaper on there, and then I've just kind of washed over with gesso again. Next step is to add a big slab of black in that top right. This is kind of sugar or construction paper. It's quite heavy. What I'm doing now is really thinking ahead and kind of starting to plan what this collage is eventually going to be, and I know that it's going to run in a linear pattern across the piece, so I'm just collaging strips across my piece to just kind of get a feel for how that will work. Right, I'm going to freeze this because a little unusual what I'm doing at the moment is I'm cutting some Financial Times paper to A4 size. So you'll see me there, look, just using the ruler to rip along the edge, and on these sheets that I'm preparing is what I'm going to print my design. Now, as you'll see in a second, I'm using a kind of a repeat pattern of kind of broken percentage signs. I don't know, the idea for this was just, I guess, how completely bewildered I am by economics, hence the Financial Times, and kind of how economics is used to just kind of obfuscate and kind of cloud reality. Certainly that's how I feel at times. So there you go, there spilling out of my inkjet printer is my kind of broken pattern of percentage signs that are just printed off Word, and I'm now, just like with the kind of the previous collage layer, I'm just ripping those into sections, linear patterns, overlapping them, as I said before, kind of breaking that, ripping through those lines of percentage signs, just to try and, so it's not uniform, so that pattern kind of starts, then stops, overlaps, breaks, just to create some interest really, and further kind of, well, I guess, obfuscate and kind of muddy and cloud the image, which is kind of the meaning I was going for as well. So all of that sealed down again with varying glues, and here starts the kind of decollage stage. So with my design, and you could use any design, any drawn element, repeated, whatever you want. It could be a pattern like I've put on here, it could just be a single drawing, but the way I use this is just having a very light linear pattern that I can then use, as you see me doing here, to cut around parts of, and I'm really varying the kind of blade pressure here. So sometimes I'm just trying to go through one layer, other times I'm really digging into those layers and using the tip of the blade to kind of poke in and rip and pull up and pull a few layers out at once, and it's kind of even no idea really what's going to kind of pop out. So knowing that I wanted some high contrast here, I've gone really light, knowing that just under that top layer is some black, and I want that black to contrast with the white in that area. In other areas I'm just kind of digging in a lot harder, in hope really that something interesting is going to kind of emerge. And you can't really predict. You can predict obviously what parts you're cutting and control the design as you move forward, but you never quite know what is going to get revealed, and therein is the joy and the kind of spontaneity. So at times I'm cutting out the positive here, at times I'm cutting out the negative. That is kind of further muddying and clouding and breaking up the pattern, if you like. So I guess it's quite self-explanatory. This takes a while, this stage, depending on the complexity of what you're cutting and kind of how many layers of collage you've built up, so how much digging down you've got to do. So I'm up on the top there. Again, I think I was probably pressing quite light here, just only rupturing those layers very gently just to try and reveal maybe just one or two layers of collage. A bit of repair work with some PVA. Yeah, great fun. The more you cut away, sometimes you cut a piece and you think, oh no, I've cut the wrong bit, or I wish I hadn't cut that out. But it just doesn't matter, because as you see in a minute, the next stage, you can just almost scrap everything you've done. I'm sealing it all here with a layer of matte medium, just to step back really and have a look. There's some close-ups of the textures so far. You can see text peeking through, plain colour, painted parts, little parts of pictures, fragments really. I love kind of peeling billboards and ads and posters, and so this sort of thing really appeals to me. I'm going to have like a brief interlude here, because if you are doing this kind of decollage technique, you are going to get some really distinct areas. And for you gel plate enthusiasts out there, take a pause and do a wax crayon rubbing, because you can often get a transfer with your wax crayon rubbing that's equally as interesting as your finished collage. So you could do this at just every few minutes if you want really, and build up quite a bank of wax crayon rubbings to come back to later and have as a side project. Anyway, back to the kind of task at hand. Here I'm doing some more decollage, but some really specific stripes I'm breaking into that pattern, and then inlaying some collage, some sort of bespoke bits that I've cut. Okay, so I could really have stopped at a number of points up to now and just kind of left it, but I wanted to just go through a few more possibilities. So what I'm going to do now is use that sander again to completely remove a section and kind of rethink it, if you like. Here I am kind of patching in to that area that I've just sanded out, and I thought I'd have a little play with scale. So using that same percentage sign, just wanted to have a little exploration really of what would happen if I've got one area where there's the same repetitive feature, but on a much larger scale. Would that give me a kind of point of focus, or would it kind of disrupt and kind of dominate too much? So I put it in as quick as I put it in, didn't really like it, so broke it up again. This time I'm using graphite to trace transfer a pattern straight off of just a plain paper printout from the same document that I made the percentage signs on, cutting that back. Still enjoying myself, still exploring, a bit of sanding again, rupturing all the time, disrupting what I've just done. I think that's the really pleasurable part of collage, is this kind of restless process. So again, using that graphite technique, further ripping into that oversized part of the pattern just to try and soften that down again, see how that sits with me. As fast as I was doing it, I was bored with it, so I think, as you'll see as I moved on in a minute, the whole thing just gets wiped away again, and I'm going to look at that section completely differently. But that's the joy of collage. Sometimes you think you're going too far, and you kind of lose it for a while, and then you can bring it back by just shifting your focus away from an area and just working into another area, trying to balance it up. If one part dominates too much, you just move to another part, come back to the other bit later. Eventually you're going to get there, or not, I don't know. Sometimes you have to step away, and I did plenty of times with this, even though the video looks like I'm doing it in one sitting. This it was just done fiddling around in the evenings, probably over a week or so. So again, you'll see that section I've just been working on it's been completely obliterated, and I'm back in removing whole slabs and not being too precious. This area I want to create a real sort of blast of contrast tonally to see how that looks. So I'm just tracing that shape, and I'm going to do another inlay. I've got this fantastic poster, one of loads of posters I just picked up in Berlin. They're just lying around the floor. They're amazing, got loads of cool graphic details. They're often really robust papers, kind of well printed, so they're great for collage. Ever you find yourself in Berlin, I came home with half a suitcase full. So there you go, pasting that one in. Over the top of that, I can't even remember now, I think I put some white back in, and as I said before, aiming for that kind of high contrast. So using the same little tracing of that inlay, sticking that down with Pritt stick or glue stick before it gets too dry, popping those little shapes out just to see how a little blast of high contrast, quite clean white against quite high gloss black looks. Sealing that again with some gel medium that just softens edges, tones everything down a little, as well as kind of adding a bit of adhesion as well. And that little blast of colour is then making me think, well, I just want to have some fun now. I want to have some bigger areas of colour just kind of ripping through this collage and these patterns. So that's where my mind went to, and that's where it's up to, where I leave it. You'll see me in a minute thinking about those reds and greens and that poster I've just been playing with, and thinking, right, I'm going to have some more of this, and I really want it to kind of bleed through the whole image. So here is where I guess the work gets, if you're into this sort of thing, a little bit more kind of precise, and I'm back in with kind of collage, if you like. So tracing shapes, the definite areas that I want to have little pops of colour, and all of these areas that I'm tracing now on tracing paper, I'm going to have either kind of that bold red or the green off that poster. So just laying that tracing paper straight onto the poster and just really carefully cutting those shapes, those bespoke kind of shapes. Really satisfying work this, because it's like a little jigsaw really, and you kind of cut your shape out, keep it as neat as possible, then you can just offer it up, see how it looks, and if you're happy with it, glue it down using the glue stick, and then sealing it over with the gel medium, again the liquid gel medium, and hopefully building some colour right through the piece. It kind of seeps through underneath and works with that pattern. So as I said, that's about where I've left it for now. I probably need to step away and just take another look, but I think that's enough. I hope it's enough to sort of get across the message. Hope you enjoyed it. If you like the video, remember, subscribe to the channel. If any questions or requests come to mind, or if anything needs a bit of clarity, this is just how I use collage and decollage. It's one of the many ways in which I use collage. Just drop some comments in below and I'll cover some more if you're interested. Take it easy, ta-ta.